All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of The Urban Gardener. I want to thank you all for joining me today for this episode. We're going to be talking about our raspberries that we got growing in our garden. We're going to be transferring them out and moving them. We're going to go over that here in just a little bit. I do want to ask you real quick here at the top of the episode to hit the subscribe button down below. Follow along with our garden adventure here in the Urban Gardens. I hope everybody's gardens are going great this season. Everything's been going really well here so far as we're getting our season started. The weather's changing a bit here in Southern Oregon, and I know around the country right now in some places that you guys are still under snow, still waiting to get into your gardens. I hope that happens for you real soon. But here we're going to get going. We're going to get talking about our raspberries. All right, here we are in the garden right now where I have planted out some raspberries a couple of seasons ago. Now, raspberries are a great example of beginning gardening and not necessarily understanding exactly what you're going to get with an individual type of plant. Now, raspberries was a big lesson for me to learn. A couple of years ago, I was at the garden center. There was a big box. It had a bunch of raspberry canes in it. I thought to myself, hey, I really like raspberries. I want to grow some raspberries. So I grabbed a couple of canes. Didn't think about exactly what variety they were or any sort of thing like that. I then came home and thought, heck, this is a great place in the garden. Why don't I just put them there? And I didn't really think about that at all what it was going to end up doing to the overall garden. Now, raspberries are a very invasive, prolific type of plant. Now, they have a really strong root system that carries itself throughout your garden and can really go out, stretch itself out into places you don't want it to go. So here I want to show you real quick a little clip that I made just when I was taking out the raspberries that made it onto the other side of the fence, and show you how that root system really kind of works a little bit. I obviously learned the hard way. As you can see, what the raspberry plant does here is it puts out a root system, and it just starts taking that root and keeps going along the way down there and keeps popping up new plants along the way. And the problem is I've got to fish all of those roots out of there, all those little plants. And then when I get the main plant and the little plants removed, I've got to keep my eye out for new little starts that could pop up with remaining root that might be under there that I missed. So hopefully I'll be able to choke out these raspberries and get them out of here and relocate them to another part of our garden. I really do love raspberries. So what I do intend to do now with these raspberries is move them and take them out of our garden here and put them into a container where we can kind of contain those roots the best that we can and hopefully be able to get ourselves a good amount of raspberries when it comes harvest time. What I want to kind of do though real quick is explain to you a little bit what I learned about the raspberries themselves as a plant, besides the fact that they grow out really well on their roots and shoot up new plants. Is if you can see here with some of these older, this is an older plant. This is a what you call a floricane. It's a second year cane, and it's in the springtime starts to put out new growth onto what is your old woody cane from the last season, and these will produce earlier into your summer, so your floricanes will be your early producers, at least on what I believe this variety is. I really want to kind of stop and mention to you as well is there are tons of different varieties of raspberries. You've got different colored ones from cream, red, purples, you know, different types of colors. You also got different types of fruiters, when they fruit and whatnot. Some only will fruit on their second year canes, and you'll have to grow your primocanes into your second season to get a fruit. A lot of varieties that they have out now do produce on your primocanes in your first year on those as well. So this one here will get fruit earlier in the season on our floricane, and then the new shoots that come up from below, which are your primocanes, we will see fruit off of these later in the summer into the fall. All right, let's take a real close-up look real quick here at these different canes. Now you got your wooded cane, that's your cane from last year, which is your floricane. And as you can see here, like I said, you've got new growth growing off of your floricane. And one of the ways that I learned that you understand what your floricane is that it produces a 3-leaf set in its second year. Okay. Now these floricanes will produce earlier for us, like I said, and then later in the season, you've got your primocanes. And these are the ones that are coming up out of that root that's popping up and pushing them out all around the main floricane. These will become producers on this type of variety later in our season. And as I said, some varieties of raspberries don't produce fruit on your primocanes in the first season. This one does. Another way to tell, 5-leaf set. Your floricane has a 5-leaf set, or sorry, your primocane has a 5-leaf set, and your floricane has a 3-leaf set. So, and then these ones here, your primocanes, as they fruit later into the fall, will be left in to become your floricanes next year. Your floricanes of this year will be cut off right after they produce their fruit. But we're going to go over all of that sort of stuff as we get going into the season, and we really focus on these raspberries as they are transplanted into a container that we'll relocate into another part of our garden. So real quick, let's kind of go over that container, and then we'll get to taking these raspberries out of our garden. All right, so before we pull out our raspberries out of the garden over there, what we got to do is we've got to get a container prepared for them. Now, I just picked up this big container here at a local department store. And one of the first things we're going to have to do with it, though, is because it's just a big old bucket with no holes in the bottom, we have to create some drainage. So what we'll do now is we'll drill in some holes around the bottom of this, and then we'll get ready to transplant our raspberries into our outdoor container. There, now we've put some holes into the bottom of this container. It's well set for drainage. One thing I did want to mention though is always put holes around what would be the deepest part of your container where water will eventually pool up and stay if you don't have good drainage there. So we've made sure we got plenty of holes in here. Our container is now ready to plant out our raspberries. All right, so now it's time for us to go ahead and transplant our raspberries into our container. We put in a layer of soil there for them to be set into. We've got our garden fork here that will loosen up the soil all around the base of these canes. We'll work the primocanes out in the new plants and the root system there all the way around and try to keep them really intact around what is our floricanes that we'll pull out. We'll transplant all of those into our bucket. Now it's time to get digging. So now that we got those dug out, I wanted to kind of get in here and show you once more these root systems. I know I showed you in a little clip earlier. But look at that. These are your different canes. And the root system stretches itself out, pops up a new cane, which becomes a new primocane. Goes along a little further, pops out a couple of more, and then continues to go and stretch itself out through your garden to find more and more space to put up these very, very prolific plants. And we did have a couple that did kind of pop off as we were trying to get them out, even though we were trying to be really gentle there. But what we'll end up having to do now is get back into there and really go look after some of those roots that are trailing around so that we hopefully don't get any more plants trying to grow in our garden space here. So we got our pot already filled up with soil. We've got our canes removed from the garden space. What we need to do now is arrange them into our pot and get them ready to be moved to another place in our garden. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the main floricanes that we have, which are your woodier ones like we talked about earlier. We're going to place those up into the center. We're going to get those roots and that root ball right down into the middle there. And then we're going to take our other primocanes and we're going to work them around the main floricane and arrange them in like so. Now what we might have to do here in just a little bit is put a stake up in here. We'll get that done here in just a minute. So our raspberries all transplanted into our container there. The thing I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to go in, cut off some of these pieces that are just not growing anything back off of our floricanes. And after that, our plant should be in nice shape. Our plants all put in. You can see our primocanes all around our main floricanes. We've got it all trimmed up. These raspberries look really, really nice in its container. And the one thing I was going to mention to you, once you get your plants put into a container, you'll want to water them in. You do that with most plants, but today, I don't know if you can hear in the background right now, I'm not going to water them in because I'm expecting some good rain coming in. So I'd rather have these things rained in versus me watering them in with my home water. So we've got those raspberries all removed from our gardens. They're now planted into our large pot. The rain has subsided and they're all basically watered into this pot now. And one of the things I did want to kind of go over real quick is that the root system of these plants was just basically ripped out of its home. So in a little bit, these plants are going to really hit some shock, and it's going to have a little bit of trouble. And you'll see this with most plants that you're pulling out of your garden by their roots. Not going to take it too well for those first couple of days. So we'll expect some shock. We'll expect some of these leaves to kind of die off a little bit as it gets used to being inside of the container it's in. No need to worry at all though, because these plants will be just fine. Raspberries are a very strong and prolific plant like we talked about, so they'll grow just fine. I have some of the primocanes that I pulled out of the other side of the garden just a few days before we actually pulled this one out. And so these have already gone through some shock. You see some of the leaves have already dried off and have died off there, but you can see we got some new growth coming in on all of our tips. Leaves are looking just fine. So these plants will be doing really, really well. And we'll be putting these out into our gardens alongside of these raspberries that we have here growing as well. And see what kind of berries we get later in the season. And as far as fertilizing or anything like that is concerned, I've used my basic soil mix, the type of soil mix that I went over in the potato episode. I'll put an iCard right above to that episode, and you can kind of check out the soil mixture that I used there. There's some manure in there, some just basic topsoil, and what I've also done is mixed in just a little bit of all-purpose organic fertilizer. And that's basically all that this plant is going to need. It's going to be just fine growing, mainly out of the garden soil usually anyways. But in order to hope for some better and stronger berries as this season goes, we're going to give it some extra nutrients and probably top dress it out here in another month or two with some more of that organic all-purpose fertilizer. So all right, our raspberry plants are all settled into our large container that we got now, and we'll come back and we'll check on those plants later on in the season as we continue to get growing here. I want to thank you all so much for joining me on today's episode. Please give this episode a big thumbs up. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything at all, please hit me up in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe. Follow along with further garden adventures here on The Urban Gardener, and I'll see you again on the next episode. Okay. Our raspberry plants are all and this plant's going to be going into this. We're on the other side that had grown to the other side of. All right, that's not gonna work. It's fine here real soon. That's not what I'm saying.